Dominic Salvatore stands outside the lobby glass and watches Elena move like a small, cautious animal. Mornin cuts the marble floor in clean, bright lines. She wears a sling and a hospital band that flutters a little as she reaches for a stack of folders. Something in his chest tightens like a fist. He opens the door and steps in without knocking. Elena looks up and offers a smile that does not reach her eyes. "Mornin'," she says, voice small and frayed. Her hair is tucked into a messy knot and smells faint of lemon and hospital soap. Dominic notices bruises peeking where the sling meets skin and the slow way she shifts weight. He keeps his questions measured like he keeps his accounts. "Did you fall?" he asks, keeping the tone casual and light. She looks at the sling, then at the floor, then back up. "I tripped on the stairs," she says, slow and careful. Her fingers twist once in the band, and she swallows. He has read more lies than he'd like to count. Elena knows the names of his clients and that he prefers black coffee and slow music. She also knows which deliveries should be looked over and which rooms never get unlocked. Her trust is small and earned. The bruises are a different language. "Did anyone see?" he asks, softer. Her jaw tightens. "No," she says. "I didn't want to bother anyone." The way she says bother is like a person who has survived by being small. Dominic decides then to do more than ask questions. He calls a doctor and insists she stay at the office until he arranges transport. Elena hesitates but nods. She tries to reach for a mug, and the motion makes her wince. Dominic lifts it from her and places it within reach, watching the way her fingers curl as if protecting a flame. For 2 days, Dominic keeps the office running and his attention taut. He answers emails, meets clients, and studies the camera feed with a man who treats footage like a ledger. Elena begins staying late, finishing paperwork under the hum of fluorescent lights. Dominic notices the way she avoids the street lamps outside and the way she pauses at the door as if listening for a footstep. On the third night, he follows her at a distance. He stays in his car and marks turns with patience. Elena walks fast with purpose, and a shadow falls into step behind her. The man moves closer and grips her arm, rough and casual as if taking something owed. Dominic does not think. Muscle memory kicks in and the city dissolves into motion. He intercepts the man, and a short, ugly fight breaks. The attacker is quick and mean, but Dominic's hands remember older games, holds and angles and a force that uses someone's speed against them. The man runs, bleeding from a split lip that tastes like humiliation. Elena trembles on the curb, and Dominic kneels without asking. He takes her hand, and the pulse is a small and fast thing. "Why didn't you tell?" he asks, oddly gentle. Tears prick her eyes. "He'd hurt Miguel worse," she murmurs. Miguel is Elena's boyfriend, a soft-voiced man who works nights at a restaurant. Dominic has seen him in the doorway once and offered a polite handshake. Elena says Miguel has debts and people who call him in the middle of the night. Wrong people, Dominic knows, rarely come with simple motives. The next morning, Lena brings a tip. Lena maps their logistics and knows alleys the city tries to hide. She tells Dominic Carlo Moretti's name and drops a location near the river. Lena's hands move like instruments as she sketches a plan. Carlo is a word that tastes like old fights and unfinished debt. They watch Carlo's warehouse with patience and the grit of old practice. Lena slips through back entrances, and Dominic reads ledgers like a man reading confessions. Miguel's name appears in a column labeled Relay, and next to it is a mark he recognizes. His old initials, the ones he used long ago. The presence of DS makes something in Dominic cold and honest. Back at Elena's apartment, Dominic notices a small locket under her pillow. She gives it to him, and inside is a faded photograph. A woman with tired eyes and a child with a crescent birthmark near the ear. Dominic knows that crescent. He has seen it under the hospital light of a room that held a decision and a door. The locket is a cut through years he thought sealed. Sophia was her name, once bright and defiant, and the memory of her rolls through Dominic like a film. He remembers promises he made and left, like an old coat in a closet. Elena listens while she folds the locket into his palm and says Sophia told her the father left because it was dangerous. Dominic feels every choice he made tilt with the weight of consequence. He finds Miguel under a bridge where the walls taste like river and rust. Miguel looks like a boy grown thin with worry. His jaw trembles when Dominic asks about Carlo. He makes me fetch phones, cards, and small things, Miguel says. He says it's protection. He said if I refused, Elena would pay. Dominic hears the apology and knows the debt is not simply financial, it is leverage over fear. He meets Detective Anna Rivera at a diner where the coffee is thick and the light slips off the counters. Anna is steady and blunt, a woman who pieces crime like puzzle fragments. Dominic offers the ledger he and Lena recovered and a description of Carlo's routines. He does not tell her everything, but he offers enough to interest her professional hunger. Anna squints at the pages, then looks up. This ties into trafficking and extortion, she says, but I need a witness willing to make statements and take the stand. Dominic feels the old arithmetic of choices. Cooperating means destroying what's left of a life built on shadows. He looks at Elena and sees a person who deserves daylight more than his secrecy. They plan a meeting to flush Carlo out. Lena plants cameras and recruits 2 men who owe her small favors. Anna lines up officers at the periphery and agrees to wait for the signal. Dominic lures Carlo to a diner with a promise to settle old scores, and they wait as if waiting for weather. He sits like a man holding his breath. Carlo arrives with a grin and 2 men that smell of nicotine and cheap whiskey. He talks like he owns the air. Dominic keeps his voice low and offers terms. Free Miguel from the deals and stop running those collections. Carlo laughs like a cracked bell. You come to bargain, he says. You come like a man who forgets himself. When Carlo stands small, noises ripple into motion. One man produces a gun, and movement becomes violence. A chair smashes back, and the diner becomes a flurry of shouts. Lena's phone records everything in jerky light, and the officers on the perimeter move like a net. Anna's voice cuts the noise with a crisp command. Shots are fired, and everything becomes a punctuation of sound. Men scatter at the sight of police. Carlo moves toward a back door, and his men break into a run. Officers close on them with practiced speed. Lena snatches the ledger that Carlo drops and hands it like evidence into Anna's steady palm. Arrests follow fast. Carlo is taken as he tries to slip through the river district. Luis, a rival who watched for opportunities, finds his own alliances threatened by the sweep. The community breathes, a small collective exhale. Dominic sits with Anna in an interrogation room and signs a statement until his hand grows numb. He agrees to testify in exchange for witness protection for Elena and Miguel. Anna looks at him with a recalculated respect and warns the cost will be high. Dominic understands the price. He has traded power for a shot at making things right, even imperfectly. He takes the papers with a kind of relief that feels a little like grief. The trial is long and meticulous, a slow unspooling of ledger lines and phone records. Dominic takes the stand and says a name he has not spoken aloud in years. Dominic Salvatore, he tells the courtroom. The old name hits like an opened wound, then a healing salt. He testifies on Carlo's operations and on who took orders that night. Elena sits in the gallery and looks small with her arm in a brace. Miguel is there, hands clenched. The men who once called Dominic boss watch with quiet fury. Some plead guilty, others strike deals. The verdicts happen like weather changing. Men plead, some take deals, others face time. After the case, Dominic's life narrows and then reshapes. He enters witness protection and gives up the empire he once commanded. He asks for one thing, a chance to be in Elena's life. Anna presses the paperwork and arranges relocation quietly. Dominic signs away much to save what remains. They open a small café in a coastal town under new names. Dominic pours coffee with hands that once counted ledgers. Elena waits tables with a sleeve that still shows faint purple where bruises were. Miguel bakes in a back room, steadying his hands into craft. Their days are careful and slow. Trust builds in small increments. Elena is not immediately forgiving. She keeps distance and comes close in moments that look ordinary. Dominic learns to accept the smallness of their new life as a gift and a penance. Months pass, and the cafe becomes a place of soft routine. Customers nod, and children press noses to glass. Lena visits twice and brings news like folded paper. Detective Anna checks in occasionally, her voice warm in the line of duty. They build a life that cannot be measured in ledgers. A woman named Rosa appears one afternoon with news of Sophia. She carries the kind of sorrow people wear after war. Rosa tells them Sophia left the city years ago, tried to hide from pain, and then died quietly. The information cuts sharp and clean. Elena weeps, and the grief is mutual and deep. They grieve together and then make place for new days. The locket sits on a shelf in the cafe, a small relic of what was lost. Dominic keeps a photograph of Sophia folded in a drawer and sometimes touches it like a prayer. He writes in a journal at night, naming regrets he will carry without asking for absolution. Life grows steady and small victories accumulate. Miguel teaches pastry classes for kids with flour-smeared faces. Elena begins to laugh in ways that are not cautious. Dominic repairs furniture and learns to answer to a name that no longer demands obedience, but only presence. The photograph of Sophia waits on the windowsill under sunlight, and the crescent birthmark seems less like a wound and more like a memory stitched in light. Sometimes the past whispers in the form of strangers asking odd questions. Dominic deflects with steady politeness and checks the back door twice before locking up. Lena's warning hums under his skin, and he makes a note to check deliveries twice that week. Caution is now instinct. On the morning after the arrests, the neighborhood breathes differently. Windows open and people move with a little less hurry. Dominic walks the streets and feels the change like a small private relief. Old names on alley walls seem to fade, as if paint remembers deserts better than deeds. He thinks of how many quiet agreements once braided through these blocks. Lena brings him printed call logs and points to burner numbers. They were careful, she says, tapping entries. Carlo ran runners and physical drops. He used the DS initial to scare people. Her voice is pragmatic and thin. Dominic feels an old sickness at the idea that his name became a weapon. Anna works with them to prepare testimony that helps rather than destroys. She is precise, steady, and blunt in a way Dominic finds necessary. You don't need a full confession, she says. You need clarity on Carlo and how he endangered people. Dominic practices the names and dates until they become fit for a witness box. During a slow courthouse recess, Elena pulls him to a corridor. She asks in a tight voice why he left her years ago. Dominic answers with a confession that tastes like iron and regret. I thought leaving would keep you safe, he says. I thought I could stop the chain by stepping away. The words land between them like fragile tiles. The trial unspools with patient detail, ledgers, phone records, and witness statements. Lena sits in the packed gallery like an anchor, watching quietly. Prosecutors lay out Carlo's network in small surgical pieces. The defense tries to fray those edges, but Dominic's testimony holds because it focuses on facts, not bravado. When the judge hands down a sentence, it is heavy but necessary. Carlo is taken away and his men scatter into smaller dangers. Dominic signs into witness protection and trades the front businesses for anonymity. Anna walks him through the paperwork with a steady hand and helps arrange protection for Elena and Miguel as well. The move to a coastal town is abrupt and awkward. They pack a few belongings, a photograph of Sophia and the locket. They arrive to gulls and salt air and a climate that refuses to hold grudges. Dominic takes a job in a small cafe where mismatched chairs demand humble work and honest hours. Days settle into a soft, repetitive rhythm. Dominic learns the right pressure for milk foam and how to time bread to rise quietly. Elena waits tables and Miguel bakes, turning small flour-dusted miracles out the back. The town knows nothing of their old names, and that ignorance feels like shelter. Grief arrives in quiet waves. Elena discovers Rosa, a woman who once knew Sophia, and hears that Sophia died quietly years ago. The news is a hard, finite thing, and they grieve together in a narrow kitchen above the shop. The locket moves from the bedside to a place of honor on a shelf, a small relic of a life they cannot reclaim. As the cafe gains regulars, Dominic finds a new kind of currency in people's small gratitude. A retired teacher buys coffee and tells stories of his garden. Mrs. Gallo, an elderly neighbor, asks Elena to teach pastry to neighborhood kids. These attachments stitch their days and build community muscles that feel safer than any command issued through fear. Lena visits occasionally with news and cautious humor. She warns them of men who probe new neighborhoods looking for soft edges. They smell for weakness, she says over coffee. Dominic listens and gives her what he can, grateful for a friend who knows the old language of danger and loyalty. Anna keeps in touch with a file she treats like a talisman. She calls on birthdays and legal anniversaries, reminding Dominic that the law sometimes works in slow increments. "You did the right hard thing," she says once. Dominic files the words away, like a small hard jewel. Years pass and small triumphs accumulate. Miguel teaches pastry classes for kids with flour-smeared faces. Elena begins to laugh with a looseness that does not feel rehearsed. Dominic repairs furniture and learns to answer to a name that no longer demands obedience but only presence. They are not perfect, but they are together, and together feels like the hardest victory of all. Sometimes the past whispers through strangers who ask odd questions. Dominic deflects with steady politeness. He checks deliveries and locks doors and practices a caution that feels less like fear and more like care. The town's pace is a salve that works slowly and reliably. On slow afternoons, they sit on a bench behind the shop and let the sea wash the noise away. "Do you ever regret staying?" Elena asks once, half teasing and half real. Dominic thinks of ledgers and the men he left behind and answers simply. "I regret what I did," he says, "but not staying now." Miguel teaches a class one evening, and the kids show up with flour on their faces and pride in their hands. Dominic watches them from the back and feels something like permission to breathe. Elena teaches a gentle song, and a toddler listens like scripture. Small routines become the marrow of their days. The photograph of Sophia and the child sits on the windowsill and gathers soft light. People ask about it, and Elena offers a softened history that feels like truce. Dominic touches the locket some nights and plays a song that once played in a house he no longer owns. Memory becomes a map he consults rather than a road he walks blindly. On an anniversary of the arrests, they hand out free pastries to the neighborhood. Dominic stands at the counter and feels the exchange of gratitude as a different kind of currency. Lena raises a cup with a friend, and their eyes meet in a flash of quiet solidarity. For a moment, the old world feels like a weather pattern they survived. When Rosa returns to the café with more stories about Sophia, they listen as if listening is repair. She tells them of a woman who tried to leave the life behind and did her best to keep a child safe. The news is balm and salt. Elena offers Rosa a permanent table and a daily cup of tea in thanks. Dominic revisits old streets sometimes, not for reckoning, but to measure distance. He nods at faces that hardly remember him and keeps away from haunts that once fed an empire. He's not the man of fear anymore. He's a man who mends things slowly and pours coffee with a tenderness that started when survival became too costly. The years soften the sharp edges of nightly fear, but leave the clear lessons his constant companion. Elena becomes confident in ways that surprise her. She looks at him and sees both abandonment and return. Miguel's hands grow steady and laughter fills the kitchen each morning. They construct a life from small acts rather than grand commands. At night, Dominic writes lists of regrets and lists of ordinary gratitude. He keeps the locket and sometimes reads the names he cannot say aloud into a journal. He locks the door after closing, sits by the window, and watches the town breathe. The devastation that once divided them now marks a line where choices were made. The truth that once felt like accusation becomes a clear threshold between a life of taking and a life of making. Dominic learns to measure loyalty in presence instead of fear. He watches Elena cross the street without scanning for shadows and feels a simple kind of triumph. Repair, he realizes, is work that does not announce itself. People in the town come to know the cafe as a place that tastes of patience and honest pastries. Children press their noses to the glass, and regulars argue warmly over the best cinnamon roll. Dominic pours coffee with steady hands and fewer secrets. The ledger he once used sits closed, its initials a reminder of what he will never allow again. The truth was devastating, yes, but its devastation forces a choice Dominic could not make when fear ruled his veins. He gives up an empire to rebuild something quieter and truer. He holds a small family together with daily rituals and the hard, slow work of presence. In the end, the life they carve out is not grand, but it is theirs, and that is a beginning.